Hi, I'm Ian Whittaker, host of the JCDecaux Digital Changemakers podcast. The Digital Changemakers podcast showcases industry research and insights to inspire senior marketeers to push the boundaries on their marketing strategies and become change agents in their organizations. Today, we're talking about the fashion industry and how purchasing trends have changed in recent years. Research has found that Gen Z, the generation born between 1997 and 2012, are more sustainably minded than previous generations when it comes to purchasing clothing. However, although this generation would like to consume more sustainably, they often find that high costs prevent them from doing so. So how can consumers engage with fashion in a more sustainable way without breaking the bank? To give us an insight into how businesses and marketeers can meet the sustainability needs of their customers whilst also driving industry issues, I'm thrilled to welcome Josephine Philips, founder of SOJO. SOJO is a sustainable fashion tech startup that's centralizing and modernizing the clothing repair and tailoring industry. The platform allows customers to book door-to-door repair and alteration services with a few simple clicks. Josephine studied physics at King's College London with a minor in philosophy, and while she was at university became heavily involved in both the Business Society and the Feminist Society. In 2021, she launched SOJO, and just a year later, she was named as one of the Forbes 30 under 30 in the technology industry for 2022. So welcome, Josephine. Josephine.
Yes, Ian.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Lovely. You don't know yet?
No. I think I do. I mean, from everything you've done so far, I'm sure this is going to be absolutely fascinating.
Amazing.
And it's a great sort of, if you look at it, what you've done in such a short amount of time is fantastic. Can you just sort of explain a bit further, sort of just a bit about yourself?
Yeah.
And then just also as well for the audience, sort of the background SOJO and how it started.
Yeah, I mean, where to begin?
Yeah, well,
I suppose for me, the journey into SOJO and actually sustainable fashion more broadly came during university. So it was a few years ago. And essentially I was and still am really strong feminist. But I then discovered how unethical the fashion industry is when it comes to the kind of treatment of majority women of color garment workers. So essentially I kind of wanted to step away from fast fashion and discovered how not only exploitative, but also environmentally destructive, highly polluting, highly wasteful. It was just uncovering all these problematic things with the industry. And I was like, I want to change this, or I want to be a part of something that's different. And so for me, in that, there was kind of an unpacking of what does it mean to have a sustainable wardrobe? I started shopping secondhand clothes. I started wanting to repair my clothes instead of throwing them away and being part of that culture. But then I found the whole experience of tailoring and repair so kind of inconvenient, archaic. I didn't know how to sew myself. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how much it should be. The whole process was really essentially it wasn't that convenient for someone who's used to everything being at their fingertips and highly technological. So I was like, I need to create it because the solution wasn't there. So I wanted it for myself. And I set about essentially creating SOJO, which is a platform you can book on web or app where if you want to get your clothes tailored or repaired, you can. And it's there to inspire a longer term wardrobe, a wardrobe where you're looking after what you already have and one that is trying to fight the wasteful culture of fast fashion.
And I was going to say, I mean, which is absolutely superb.
Thank you.
No. I mean, it's great, and I mean, it all makes a lot of sense. I don't worry, I won't talk about my own fashion things on this, but I think when you look at the fashion industry, I mean, it's such a huge industry, and for a startup like yourself, I mean, it must be pretty difficult to actually break into that and get the message across.
Yeah, it's true. I'm using the term change in industry, but we're talking about $1 trillion industry and an industry that accounts for 10% of global carbon emissions, accounts for 92 million tons of waste. It's no mean feat at all. And don't get me wrong, I know how challenging it is. And it has been really challenging. I think the most challenging part has actually been this cultural shift that we've required for people to change their behavior. It's getting people to change the way they're used to doing things is just difficult. And trying to say, instead of shopping every week or instead of buying a new pair of jeans if your jeans rip, and instead of, being really wasteful. How about you care and you value what you have and you repair it instead? It's difficult, but I think what we've realized is we are luckily not only doing what we're doing in our kind of silo, we're actually part of a broader movement where people are becoming more conscious in general. And so we're trying to push the wave whilst also riding the wave, essentially.
And that actually leads on to the next point, which is, when you look at it from a consumer standpoint, in terms of what you're doing, and as you say, there's a lot more people out there who are concerned about what's happening with the environment, but also as well what's happening with workers' rights as well. To go back to this point before, that many people sort of are working in, they're working in industries that are low paid and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think people are becoming, especially the younger generations, just more conscious and like wanting more ethics from brands, which I think so like far have been so opaque and like, as I said, exploitative.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly. And so, when you put yourself, I mean, you've already answered sort of a lot of the next question, which is, to put yourself in the consumer's sort of feet when you're looking at how to get your message across. Sort of how do you do that? And actually, what do you find are the most effective techniques?
I mean, okay, yeah, I'm going to slightly contradict what we've actually just said, which is sustainability is front of mind.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not the most front of mind. I think people, especially when people are actually spending and especially when people are actually decisioning, a report actually came out recently which was talking about that quality and price are coming up as higher priorities than sustainability, for example. So actually, when putting myself in the kind of consumer shoes, and it's reasonably easy to do because obviously I created the solution for myself, so I can imagine what barriers people were facing in looking for a solution. Actually pushing the point of price and convenience is something that you realize the levers really work on. And we went through a lot of discovery in terms of testing different, ads online and paid social and all that kind of thing, and figuring out what do our customers respond to. And actually, even from customer interviews, you listen to how they spoke about their problem, and the way they're speaking about their problem might be not mentioning sustainability at all and saying, I'm 5'1", which means all my trousers are too long, and therefore you need to speak to them about unique body shapes, sizes and heights, and you need to speak to them about, and then we did custom interview with someone who said that they absolutely don't have time in their life to go to a high street and go pick up their clothes 5 days later. And so you speak to the door-to-door service. Yeah. And it's all about, there are different aspects and USPs of what you have and what you offer, and to which audience does it work in terms of who you're speaking to.
And I think that's an important point. I mean, we've sort of focused on the sustainability part, but you're absolutely right. It's also as well just a better fit part for the sort of clothes that
Who doesn't
people...
want to look good? Yeah.
Well, this is true. You might be surprised, but I mean, there's a few people out there. But it is absolutely true in terms of that you've got a sort of different messages here, sort of in terms of that. I guess for both those sorts of concepts, both in terms of the better fit and also as well the sustainability angle, from what I mean, just from hearing from what you've said and so forth, with what's going on in the cost of living crisis, and people are feeling under pressure in terms of the household budgets, particularly when you're in a city like London, you're a younger person starting off your career. Yeah. You look at rent prices are going up. I mean, it's not we're in an inflationary environment. The impression I get is that what SOJO does actually can help. So that there's a way here, as it were, to square many things.
Exactly. So I think so often, well, I say misconception, you can kind of look at it from both ways. So often sustainability is actually associated with increased inconvenience and increased price. So ultimately, if you're going for a more sustainably made garment, they're paying their workers ethically, they're sourcing more ethical materials, it costs more, in which case you are paying more. But actually what we're doing at SOJO in terms of trying to marry those two things of price and of sustainability is saying the most sustainable item is the one already in your wardrobe, and actually, repairing a rip along a seam may cost you £10 and getting a new pair of trousers may cost you £30 or £40. So there is a saving aspect from a planet perspective and a price perspective. And I also think, though, more broadly, and not speaking to SOJO more generally, is we really need to, and I speak here from a point of privilege, but we do need to understand that quite often buying less will save you more. And that is really a kind of cultural understanding that isn't kind of at the forefront of the sustainability movement. Like, sustainability is like buy this sustainable product or buy that sustainable product or buy this sustainable product. And instead it's buy less and don't consume as much, and you won't actually be spending as much. And Adja Barber, who is, a sustainable fashion activist, she has spoken about how she used to spend so much more on fashion when she was buying fast fashion because she just bought so much of it, as opposed to the 5 quality pieces she chose to buy in a year from sustainably made brands.
Well, it always seems to fast fashion. And again, I mean, I'm not, I have to admit, I'm not, certainly not an expert on fast fashion. I'll just put it like that.
Right.
But it's sort of when you look at it from the outside, it almost seems like it's a hamster on the treadwheel. That people have to continually sort of
cost per wear you've got to consider. Because some things you wear once, you put it in the washing machine and it's broken and it's over and it's, the material isn't quality. And so you've really got to think about those kind of pieces that will last a long time, the quality materials, because actually we'll end up, the premise of cost per wear is it will end up saving you more money.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of off the back of that. And I think, what you're doing here is almost as though when you're getting the message across, again, it feels from the outside there's almost 2 aspects to it. There's one which is the SOJO specific, what you're doing and sort of promoting your own sort of brand. And then there's a wider sort of building up awareness, getting people almost attitudinal change and so forth. Now, you've been part of the JCDecaux sort of Reach Programme in the UK, sort of, which is sort of for ethical startups that are looking to sort of get their message out there. How do you see, it's not just out of home, but how do you see marketing in both those both those aims working? And where are you seeing have you seen sort of much of an impact so far?
Yeah, specifically around the out-of-home piece, I think it's a lot harder and is really hard for early stage startups and early stage, ethical startups or early stage startups that are run by, minority founders. To get out-of-home opportunity and to be able to speak to mass media is an incredible opportunity. And I think the good thing about that is, especially with SOJO, our solution ultimately is there for every single person who has clothing.
Yeah.
And so actually getting that kind of mass marketing where other brands and companies might be speaking to a really specific niche, in which case, really targeted paid social or community-driven work would be better. We really are excited by the opportunity of just speaking to the masses and just saying, do you have a hem that's too long? Do you have a zip that's broken? And this is a solution for us. More generally, I think marketing is just a complete power tool to be able to build your company. And that's ultimately, and I think getting that right is the challenge, because there's so much noise at the moment, especially with Gen Z and all the things they're, getting on their screens, and then also all the stuff they're not getting because of ad blockers and things. Out of home is an opportunity outside of that, and that's more exclusive and more rare, what you're seeing in that regard. But also getting it right of who you're speaking to and when and how is the most crucial part of kind of tapping into those customers you want to use you.
And just actually picking up on one thing you said, there is this sort of view that Gen Z it is just head down in their phones. It doesn't pick their eyes up and look at what's going on in the physical world. What I was going to say, is that that's obviously
whose opinion?
Well, it's a stereotype that is often said, but it is. So that really doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, yes and no. Obviously, there's a lot of screen time that is had, but actually, really interestingly, with SOJO, we have always been a really digital first solution, obviously. But we did a 4-week pop-up in Selfridges where we had an in-person, tailoring setup there. The uptake was incredible. Loads of Gen Z came down, and also loads of people in general. We did so many, hundreds and hundreds of services there in that short space of time. And what that taught us is that, yes, there is a very digital age and phone-focused, kind of culture that happens right now, but actually people are tired of it, and also people are pushing against it a bit more. And Gen Z are out and they are wanting to engage in the experiential economy, and they are wanting to engage in new things and different things. And us having a physical in-person presence got such great reception that, people do want to be out and about, and it's something we do want to tap into more.
That's interesting. Now, you look at sort of what you're doing so far, you've already done a lot. Okay?
And I'm tired, very tired.
Yeah, you're tired of it. No, don't blame me for that. What's next? What's next for SOJO?
Yeah, I think this question is always really interesting because people are always like, what are you going to do next? Or, what are you going to do in the next 5 years or 10 years? But ultimately, we are still so nascent. So as much as we've done, ultimately what we're trying to do is get every person who has a unique body shape and size, which is everyone. I mean, if you've got 100 people who are all size, X, they're going to look completely different. And what we're trying to do is get them to engage in a mindset shift to realize their clothes should work for them and to realize they should last a long time. That is no kind of, we're going to do this next big thing. It is chipping away at the issue at hand, which is getting people to repair their clothes, getting them to tailor them. And we will just keep going on, keep growing. We're in London now, but we want to be, UK wide. We want to be international. We can't wait to be, the global solution for repairing your clothing, both with brands and directly. So there's a lot. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. We're just at the beginning.
Well, but I mean, as you say, this is not just a one town, one country problem.
It's global.
Absolutely global.
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, people do sort of ask who your target market is. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but in the end, ultimately, we do want everyone to be repairing their clothes. And that crosses gender, that crosses age. That is just a solution for people.
And that's used to be the way that people used to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not being like, I've come up with this. It's very much like we need to go back to the way that we used to respect the things that we created and the things that we wore. And that is something that I've been incredibly inspired by my grandma, for example, in this whole kind of journey, and the way that she cares for her clothes and has handed me, a dress that she had 60 years ago. And it's just that culture needs to sort of reverse, and we need to learn from our ancestors. No,
I think that's absolutely right. We always end this.
Oh.
No. Well, you want to get outside. We always end this with saying, what's one piece of advice that you would give to people in a similar position? So what would be your?
I think my bit of advice would be, especially in the kind of sustainability world, you really need to speak to the audience with joy and with positivity in mind. And I say this because it is a really difficult time. I mean, from an environmental perspective, from a, as you say, cost of living crisis perspective, it's a difficult time for many. And there's a lot of environmental doomism and things like that. And to get people on side, to get people changing, to get them to engage in a behavior or a product that you want to sell ultimately, but an impact that you want to have underlyingly, is it needs to be rooted in positivity and why it's good for the planet, why it's good for the person, and just that kind of that vision of, ultimately we want to build a future that's better and more joyful and, more happy for individuals and the planet. And that's what you need to sell instead of the, don't do this or don't do that.
I think that's right. People have a limit to bin.
Yeah, total.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's important to get the context of why it's bad, but really, if you want people to change, what we've realized is those emotional stories and that stories that bring them along in terms of this is going to make you feel better, look better, and you're doing better. That is really what resonates with people.
That is superb. That's a great note to end on. Josephine, thanks very much for that. That's been absolutely superb.
Thank you for having me. And
no, not at all. It's been great. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing about the fantastic work that SOJO is doing to provide solutions for people who are both fashionably and sustainably minded. If there's anything you would like to ask us or hear more about, you can visit the JCDecaux Digital Changemakers Hub online. We hope you enjoyed listening, and wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.